The autumn morning sunlight filtered through the windows of the modest Brooks home as Evan helped Lily button up her favorite purple coat. His rough mechanic's hands fumbled slightly with the small buttons, but his daughter waited patiently, humming a tune she'd learned in music class. "Got your star, sweetheart?" Evan asked, watching as Lily patted her coat pocket with a solemn nod. "Right here, Daddy." She pulled out the carefully crafted paper star, its points decorated with silver glitter that caught the light. Every month since her mom passed, Lily made a new star at school. This one had taken extra care, with neat folds and careful coloring. "It's beautiful," Evan said softly, his throat tightening as Lily tucked it safely away. "Mom would love it." The drive to the Veterans Hall was short, just a few blocks through their small town of Meadow Ridge. Early morning fog still clung to the streets, and the smell of pancakes and coffee drifted from the old brick building. Cars lined both sides of the street, seemed like half the town had turned out. Inside, the hall buzzed with conversation and the clatter of plates. American flags hung from the walls, and hand-painted "Welcome Veterans" signs decorated the entrance. Evan recognized most of the faces, neighbors he'd known for years, fellow vets he saw at support group meetings, customers from his auto repair shop. "Brooks, over here," called Jim Martinez, waving from behind the serving counter. His wife Rosa was flipping pancakes on a large griddle, the sweet aroma filling the air. "Morning, Jim," Evan replied, steering Lily toward the counter. "Looks like a good turnout." "Best we've had," Jim agreed, already stacking pancakes onto 2 plates. "Hey there, Miss Lily. Extra blueberries for you today." Lily beamed, bouncing on her toes. "Thank you, Mr. Martinez." Her eyes darted around the room, taking in everything at once. They found seats at a table near the front, where Pastor Ruth was organizing some papers at the podium. The elderly pastor gave them a warm smile and a wave, her silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Daddy, can I have more syrup?" Lily asked, her plate already swimming in maple sweetness. "I think you've got plenty there, kiddo." Evan chuckled, cutting into his own stack. He noticed Mrs. Thompson from the church choir making her way over and braced himself for the usual well-meaning but awkward conversation about how they were holding up. A subtle shift in the room's energy made him look up. The main doors had opened, and a woman in a tailored navy suit walked in, followed by 2 assistants carrying folders. She moved with quiet confidence, nodding graciously to people who turned to look. Pastor Ruth approached the podium, tapping the microphone. "Good morning, everyone. We're blessed to have with us today Ms. Amelia Chen, CEO of Chen Tech Healthcare. She's here to announce an exciting new initiative for our rural veterans." Evan half listened to the introduction while trying to keep Lily from dripping syrup onto her coat. He'd heard about the healthcare program, something about expanding services to small towns like theirs. It would help a lot of his buddies who had to drive hours for VA appointments. Amelia Chen took the podium with practiced ease, her dark hair swept back in a neat bun. Her voice was warm and clear as she spoke about understanding the challenges veterans faced in accessing care and her company's commitment to changing that. "Every veteran deserves quality health care, regardless of where they live," she was saying. "That's why we're launching." Evan suddenly realized Lily wasn't beside him anymore. His heart jumped. Then he spotted her purple coat moving through the crowd toward the front. "Lily, wait," he called in a loud whisper, but she was already reaching for the speaker's sleeve. The room fell silent as Lily tugged gently on Amelia Chen's suit jacket. The CEO paused mid-sentence, looking down in surprise. "Will you be my mommy?" Evan felt his face flush hot as dozens of heads turned. He was already pushing back his chair, but before he could reach them, something remarkable happened. Amelia Chen knelt down, putting herself at eye level with Lily. Her expression softened as she met the little girl's earnest gaze. The Billionaire CEO didn't seem flustered or annoyed. She simply listened, giving Lily her full attention as if they were the only 2 people in the room. "I'm so sorry," Evan said when he reached them, his voice rough with embarrassment. "Lily, honey, we don't." "It's all right." Amelia said quietly, still holding Lily's gaze. Her smile was gentle, touched with something that might have been sadness. Evan gently took Lily's hand. We should let Ms. Chen get back to her presentation. I'm really sorry for interrupting. No need to apologize, Amelia assured him, rising gracefully to her feet. Her dark eyes held a warmth that seemed to contradict her polished corporate appearance. Evan guided Lily back to their table, his face still burning. As they gathered their things to leave early, he glanced back. Amelia Chen had returned to the podium, but her eyes followed them briefly, her expression unreadable. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the dusty windows of Brooks' IESO, Sons Auto Repair. Despite the Sons in the name, it was just Evan now, working alone in the cluttered office. Bills and invoices spread across his desk like an unwelcome blanket. He rubbed his temples, staring at the red past due stamps on several envelopes. The parts supplier was threatening to cut him off if he didn't pay by the end of the week. That would mean turning away customers, something his small business couldn't afford. A gentle knock at the office door made him look up. Pastor Ruth stood there, holding 2 paper cups of coffee from the diner down the street. "Thought you might need this after this morning's excitement," she said, setting 1 cup on his desk. The rich aroma of fresh coffee filled the small space. Evan managed a tired smile. "Thanks, Pastor. And please, can we not talk about this morning? I'm still trying to forget how I stumbled all over myself, apologizing to Ms. Chen." Pastor Ruth settled into the worn chair across from his desk, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, I don't know. I thought it was rather endearing, how flustered you got, and Ms. Chen handled it beautifully." "Lily shouldn't have put her on the spot like that," Evan sighed, taking a sip of coffee. "I need to have a talk with her about boundaries. That child has a pure heart," Pastor Ruth said gently. "Sometimes children see things more clearly than we do. They're not afraid to ask for what they need." Evan shuffled the bills into a messy pile, trying to hide them from view, but Pastor Ruth's observant eyes had already noticed. "Business been slow?" she asked carefully. "It's fine," Evan said quickly. Too quickly. "Just a temporary cash flow issue. I'll figure it out." Pastor Ruth nodded, not pressing the issue. She knew Evan Brooks well enough to recognize his pride. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping their coffee. The pastor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyebrows rising slightly as she read the message. "Well, speaking of this morning," she said, "that was Amelia Chen." Evan nearly choked on his coffee. "What? Why?" "She's asking about you and Lily." Pastor Ruth's voice was carefully neutral. "She seems genuinely interested in helping with the veterans program we discussed at breakfast. We don't need any handouts," Evan said stiffly. "I told her that," Pastor Ruth replied, typing a response on her phone. "I explained that the Brooks family carries themselves with dignity, that any assistance would need to be structured as a legitimate business partnership." Evan relaxed slightly. "Thank you." The next morning, Evan arrived at the shop to find Pastor Ruth waiting with Amelia Chen. The CEO wore a simple blazer and slacks today, looking more approachable than she had at the podium. "Mr. Brooks," Amelia greeted him with a professional smile. "I hope you don't mind us stopping by. I wanted to discuss a potential collaboration." Evan unlocked the shop door, trying to hide his wariness. "Please, come in." "And it's just Evan." They gathered in his office, where Amelia laid out a folder of documents. "We're launching a new initiative called Lily's Lift, a partnership program between local veteran-owned businesses and our healthcare network. We'd like Brooks' Sons to be our pilot location." Evan's guard went up immediately. "Why name it after my daughter?" "Because it was Lily's honest question that made me realize we needed to think bigger about community support," Amelia said. "This isn't just about healthcare. It's about creating a network of services that help veterans and their families thrive." Pastor Ruth added. "The church council has already approved matching funds for the initial phase." Evan studied the documents, his jaw tight. The program would cover his supplier debt as a startup investment and provide ongoing support for veterans' vehicle repairs. "This feels like charity wrapped in business paper," he said finally. "It's a legitimate partnership," Amelia countered. "Your expertise in automotive repair combined with our healthcare network creates a valuable service hub for veterans. We need your skills as much as you need our resources." Pastor Ruth leaned forward. "Evan, remember what you always tell the guys in support group? That accepting help when it's offered with respect isn't weakness, it's wisdom." Evan looked between them, still uncertain. But he could see the sincerity in Amelia's eyes, and Pastor Ruth's presence lent credibility to the offer. "All right," he said finally, reaching for the papers. "But I want everything in writing, clear terms about expectations on both sides." "Of course," Amelia agreed. She pulled out a pen and slid it across the desk. "Shall we review the details?" They spent the next hour going through the agreement line by line. Pastor Ruth occasionally offered suggestions to clarify language or adjust terms. By the time they finished, the partnership felt more balanced, more real. Amelia stood and extended her hand. "Welcome to Lily's Lift, Evan." He shook her hand firmly, noting the strength in her grip despite her elegant appearance. "Thank you, Miss Chen." "Amelia, please," she corrected with a small smile. Even as they wrapped up the meeting, Evan couldn't quite shake his unease about her motives. But with Pastor Ruth's approving nod and the weight of the supplier invoice lifted from his shoulders, he chose to focus on the practical benefits of the partnership. The morning's first customer pulled into the lot, and Evan excused himself to get back to work. Through the office window, he watched Amelia and Pastor Ruth walk to their cars, deep in conversation. He wondered what else they were planning, and whether he'd just signed up for more than he'd bargained for. Later that evening, Evan stood at his small kitchen stove, stirring a pot of mac and cheese, while Lily set the table. The familiar routine felt comforting after such an unusual day. "Did you like Ms. Chen's idea about naming the program after me?" Lily asked, carefully placing forks beside their plates. Evan paused, considering how to explain it to an 8-year-old. "Well, sweetie, it's complicated. Ms. Chen wants to help veterans fix their cars at our shop." "That sounds good," Lily said, climbing onto her chair, "like when you fixed Miss Martinez's truck last month even though he couldn't pay right away." "Yeah, kind of like that." Evan spooned the mac and cheese into their bowls. "But this would be bigger, more organized." "Because Ms. Chen is rich?" Lily asked between bites. "Being rich isn't what matters," Evan said gently. "What matters is doing things the right way, with honesty and hard work." "Is that why you looked worried when you were reading all those papers?" Evan smiled at his perceptive daughter. "You notice everything, don't you?" "Yes, I wanted to make sure everything was fair. But Pastor Ruth thinks it's a good idea, and I trust her judgment." They finished dinner, and Evan helped Lily with her bedtime routine. As he tucked her in, she clutched her worn stuffed rabbit close. "Daddy?" she asked sleepily. "Are you mad at me for asking Ms. Chen that question this morning?" Evan sat on the edge of her bed, his heart aching. "No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. You just surprised me, that's all." "I miss Mommy," Lily whispered. "I know, baby. I miss her too." He kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep now. I promise I'll think more about Miss Chen's idea. Night, Daddy." "Good night, Lilybug." Across town, in a sleek penthouse apartment, Amelia Chen stood before a full-length mirror, smoothing the fabric of her deep blue evening gown. The tailored silk felt like armor, appropriate for the battle of charm and influence that awaited her at the Founders' Gala. Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant, "Car, waiting downstairs." Board members, already at venue. Amelia took a deep breath, checking her reflection one final time. Her makeup was flawless, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. She looked every inch the successful CEO, exactly the image needed to secure the Veterans Clinic grant. The grand Meadow Ridge Hotel ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and wealthy donors in formal wear. Amelia moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and making small talk. "Amelia, darling," Harold Kingsley's booming voice carried across the room. The silver-haired philanthropist approached, champagne in hand. "Wonderful speech this morning at the Veterans Breakfast." "Thank you, Harold. I'm hoping we can discuss expanding the healthcare initiative." Amelia smiled diplomatically. As one of her earliest investors, Kingsley's support could make or break the clinic project. "Of course, of course. Let me introduce you to some potential donors." He guided her toward a group of board members. The evening progressed smoothly until a small commotion near the dessert table caught everyone's attention. A young boy, perhaps 6 or 7, had slipped away from the service entrance. He wore clean but simple clothes, clearly not a guest's child. The boy made his way directly to Harold Kingsley. Before anyone could intercept him, he tugged on Kingsley's sleeve and whispered something that made the philanthropist freeze. "Mommy says, you're my daddy." The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Camera phones flashed. Guests gasped and whispered behind their hands. A woman in a hotel uniform rushed forward. "Diego, come here right now." Maria Alvarez, whom Amelia recognized as one of the hotel's housekeepers, grabbed the boy's hand, her face flushed with emotion. Kingsley's complexion had gone ashen. This is ridiculous. I don't know what you're playing at." He backed away, almost stumbling in his haste to leave the ballroom. Maria hurried Diego toward the service exit, her head held high, despite the stares and whispers. The boy looked confused, clearly not understanding the chaos he'd created. Amelia's phone vibrated in her clutch. A message from her board chair. "Stay out of this mess." But Amelia couldn't take her eyes off Maria and Diego as they disappeared through the staff door. She saw the same vulnerability she'd recognized in Lily that morning, a child's simple honesty cracking the polished veneer of adult pretenses. The other guests quickly returned to their conversations, though now they buzzed with speculation and scandal. Amelia stood still amid the swirling activity, her grip tight on her champagne glass as she watched the service door swing shut. Sunlight streamed through the Brooks kitchen window as Evan poured milk into Lily's cereal bowl. The Sunday morning quiet felt different from their usual peaceful routine. The local newspaper lay on the table, its bold headline impossible to ignore: "Kingsley Paternity Scandal Rocks Founder's Gala." Evan picked up the paper, his coffee going cold beside him as he read. The article mentioned Amelia Chen multiple times, her presence at the gala, her company's connections to Kingsley Investments, speculation about how this might affect her veterans' healthcare initiative. "Daddy, why are you frowning?" Lily asked, spoon halfway to her mouth. Evan quickly folded the paper. "Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Finish your breakfast so we can get ready for church." "Is it about Ms. Chen?" "I like her." Lily stirred her cereal thoughtfully. "She smelled like vanilla when she knelt down to talk to me." "Yeah, she seems nice," Evan said carefully. "But remember what we talked about? We shouldn't believe everything we read in newspapers." They walked to church together, Lily skipping ahead in her Sunday dress, her patent leather shoes clicking on the sidewalk. The white clapboard building stood proud against the morning sky, its bell tower calling people to service. Inside, the usual pre-service chatter filled the air, but today it had a different edge. Evan noticed several people holding copies of the paper, heads bent together in whispered conversation. Amelia sat in a middle pew beside Pastor Ruth, her posture perfect but her expression tight. She wore a simple navy dress, elegant but understated. When she caught Evan's eye, she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. "Look, there's Ms. Chen." Lily waved enthusiastically. "Shh, honey, let's find our usual spot." Evan guided her to their pew near the back. As the congregation settled, Evan couldn't help noticing Maria's usual place in the choir stands was empty. The whispers around them grew more distinct. "Can't believe she'd make such accusations. Poor Mr. Kingsley, his reputation. Wonder what Chen knows about it." Pastor Ruth's strong voice cut through the murmurs as she began the service. Her sermon touched on judgment and mercy, though she never directly referenced the scandal. Evan noticed how she kept a protective hand near Amelia's shoulder during the closing prayer. After the service, Evan and Lily made their way down the church steps. A woman with a press badge stepped out from behind a parked car, notebook in hand. "Mr. Brooks? Belinda Shaw from the Meadow Ridge Chronicle. Could you comment on your connection to Amelia Chen? Sources say you're involved in her new veterans program." Evan's jaw tightened. "No comment." He took Lily's hand firmly. "Come on, sweetie. Is this your daughter?" "The one who—" "My daughter is not part of your story," Evan cut her off, his voice low but sharp. He quickly led Lily away, his heart pounding. They walked home in silence, Lily sensing her father's mood. At their front door, she finally spoke up. "Did I do something wrong, Daddy?" Evan's expression softened. "No, baby. Sometimes people just ask questions they shouldn't. Why don't you go change and we'll make lunch?" Later that afternoon, the bell above the shop door chimed. Evan looked up from under the hood of a Toyota to find Amelia standing there, looking less polished than usual in dark jeans and a casual blazer. "Got a minute?" she asked. Evan wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Sure. Coffee's fresh if you want some." They sat at his small desk, mugs between them. The newspaper lay nearby, partially hidden under some invoices. "I'll be direct," Amelia said. "The situation with Harold Kingsley is complicated, and it's going to get messier before it gets better. I want you to know that the Veterans Program funding is secure. It's coming from my personal foundation, not through Kingsley's channels. But," she paused, studying her coffee, "I'd understand if you want to back out. The media attention isn't what you signed up for." Evan was quiet for a moment, thinking of the reporter outside the church. "Is Maria okay?" "Her boy?" Amelia's expression softened slightly. "I have my legal team looking into their situation. Maria's a good person who's been treated unfairly for a long time. Yeah, she always helps with the church fundraisers. Diego's in Lily's class." Evan straightened some papers on his desk. "Look, I'm not comfortable with reporters hanging around, especially near Lily. But what you're trying to do for veterans here, that matters. If you're still in, we're still in." "Thank you." Amelia stood, adjusting her blazer. "I'll make sure my PR team deals with the press. They shouldn't bother you again. Appreciate it." Evan walked her to the door. "And Ms. Chen?" "Whatever's going on with Kingsley. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing with people when it gets tough." Amelia nodded, a complicated emotion crossing her face before she turned to leave. That evening, Amelia stood at her penthouse window, looking out over the small town of Meadow Ridge. Streetlights dotted the darkness below like scattered stars. In the distance, she could make out the church steeple, and somewhere beyond it, the modest neighborhood where Lily had asked that disarming question just yesterday morning. Her reflection in the glass looked tired. The day's events played through her mind. The whispers at church, Maria's empty choir seat, Evan's quiet integrity at the shop. And threading through it all, the echo of a little girl's voice asking if she would be her mommy. The autumn morning air was crisp as Evan unlocked the garage doors at Brooks' Son's Auto Repair. It was barely 6 a.m., but he could already see 3 pickup trucks idling in the parking lot, their veteran owners waiting patiently for the first free repair day to begin. "Morning, folks," Evan called out, flipping on the exterior lights. The open sign buzzed to life, casting a red glow in the pre-dawn darkness. "Let me get the coffee going, and we'll start checking you in." He'd barely started the coffee maker when he heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Through the window, he saw Amelia's sleek SUV pull up. She stepped out wearing dark slacks and a casual sweater, balancing 2 drink carriers and a large white bakery box. "Thought you might need reinforcements," she said, setting everything down on his cluttered desk. "And these are much better than office coffee, trust me." The smell of fresh pastries and premium coffee filled the small office. Evan couldn't help but smile. "You didn't have to do this. Partnership, remember?" Amelia started arranging paper cups and napkins. Besides, I checked with Pastor Ruth. Apparently your coffee could strip paint." "Hey now," Evan protested, but he was already reaching for one of the fancy cups. By 7, the parking lot was full. Veterans of different ages waited their turn, sharing stories and admiring each other's vehicles. Evan moved between jobs, checking engines, and directing his 2 part-time mechanics who'd volunteered their morning. Amelia surprised him by jumping right in, organizing intake forms and managing the waiting list with efficient grace. She'd rolled up her sweater sleeves and didn't flinch when oil-stained hands passed her paperwork. "Next up is Mr. Martinez's Chevy," she called out, consulting her clipboard. "Front brake issues. Thanks." Evan wiped his hands. "You're pretty good at this." "I started in my father's hardware store," she said. Customer service is customer service, whether it's brake pads or billion-dollar contracts. They worked side by side through the morning rush. At one point, Evan struggled with a particularly stubborn lug nut on an old Ford's wheel. "Here," Amelia said, grabbing the other end of the breaker bar. "On 3? They counted together, pushing hard. The nut finally broke free, sending them both stumbling backward. Their startled laughter drew grins from the watching veterans. "Nice teamwork," one of them called out. Around 11, Pastor Ruth's station wagon pulled up. She emerged carrying a cloth-covered basket that steamed in the cool air. "I thought you all might need some sustenance," she announced, revealing fresh baked bread and homemade chicken salad. The aroma drew everyone to the small break area Amelia had set up. As people gathered to eat, Pastor Ruth pulled Evan and Amelia aside. "I wanted you both to know, Maria and Diego are staying with me for now." Her voice was low but steady. "She's safe, but she's worried about losing her job if she speaks up." Evan frowned. "She's got proof though, right? About Kingsley?" "Some." Pastor Ruth nodded. "But these situations are never simple, the power dynamics at play." She glanced at Amelia. "Well, I'm sure you understand." "I do," Amelia said quietly. "Please tell her my offer of legal support still stands. No strings attached." They worked through the afternoon, the pile of completed repair orders growing steadily. Veterans left with fixed vehicles and grateful handshakes. Many tried to pay something, but Evan and Amelia stood firm. Today was free. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garage floor, Lily arrived from her after-school program. She bounded in wearing her favorite overalls, clutching something in her hands. "Daddy, Miss Chen, look what I made." She held up 2 cards, clearly crafted with great care despite the smudges from her small fingers. Each had a crayon drawing of what appeared to be the garage, with stick figures working on cars. "They're thank you cards," she explained proudly, "because you helped people today." Evan took his card, heart swelling at his daughter's thoughtfulness. The inside read, "Thank you for fixing cars and being the best daddy," in careful 3rd-grade handwriting. Amelia accepted hers with visible emotion, running her finger gently over the childish artwork. Her card said simply, "Thank you for helping Daddy help people." They stood together in the quiet garage, holding their grease-smudged cards, surrounded by the evidence of a day well spent. Empty coffee cups, scattered repair orders, tools waiting to be cleaned. The satisfaction of honest work and genuine service hung in the air between them. "We did good today," Evan said softly. Amelia nodded, still looking at her card. "Yes," she replied. "We really did." The afternoon sun streamed through the garage's open bay doors, warming the concrete floor where Lily sat cross-legged with her math homework. Every few minutes, she glanced up at Amelia, who was reviewing paperwork at the shop's front desk. "Ms. Chen?" Lily twisted a strand of her dark hair around her finger. Would you maybe braid my hair? It keeps falling in my face when I'm trying to work." Amelia looked up, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Oh, I'm not sure She paused, seeing the hopeful expression on Lily's face. "I can try, though I should warn you, I'm not very good at it." Lily bounced up, already pulling a hair tie from her pocket. "That's okay, I can teach you." Daddy tries sometimes, but his fingers are too big. From under the hood of a blue pickup truck, Evan's muffled chuckle floated over. Hey now, I manage just fine. You make lumpy braids, Daddy, Lily said matter-of-factly, making Amelia laugh. Amelia pulled up a stool, and Lily settled on the floor in front of her. Okay, Professor, Amelia said, running her fingers tentatively through Lily's hair. Show me how this works. First, you divide it into 3 parts, Lily instructed, reaching back to guide Amelia's hands. Like this. Make them even. Amelia's first attempt was crooked, with pieces sticking out at odd angles. She frowned at her work. Maybe we should start over? It's okay, Lily assured her. The first time Daddy tried, it looked like a bird's nest. Thanks for that, kiddo, Evan called out, emerging from under the hood with a grease smudge on his cheek. He watched them for a moment, something soft in his expression. Amelia tried again, her fingers growing more confident with each attempt. By the 4th try, she managed a reasonably neat braid that hung straight down Lily's back. Much better. Lily approved, touching the plait carefully. Now you just need practice. Speaking of practice, Evan said, checking his watch, it's lunchtime. Who's hungry? They gathered around the workbench, clearing a space among the tools for their sandwiches. Lily had insisted on sitting between them, her legs swinging as she munched on apple slices. Did you always want to fix cars, Daddy? She asked between bites. Actually, I wanted to be a pilot when I was your age, Evan admitted. But I discovered I liked working with my hands better. What about you, Amelia? What did you want to be? Amelia wiped her mouth with a napkin, thinking, well, for a while I thought I'd take over my parents' laundromat. I spent most of my childhood there, doing homework between folding sheets and sorting quarters. You worked in a laundromat? Lily's eyes widened with interest. My parents saved for years to buy it after we came to America. I learned a lot there, about business, about people. Amelia smiled at the memory. My mother used to say you can tell a lot about someone by how they treat other people's clothes. Is that where you learned to fold things so neat? Lily asked, pointing to Amelia's precisely folded napkin. It is, and where I learned that sometimes the most important things happen in the smallest places. She glanced at Evan. Like auto shops. After lunch, Lily pulled out a small robot kit she'd been saving. Could you help me with this? The instructions say you need to solder? What's that? Here, I'll show you, Amelia said, clearing space on the workbench. She gathered the soldering iron and other supplies from Evan's toolbox. It's like using hot glue, but for wires. Lily watched intently as Amelia demonstrated on a practice piece, explaining each step. See how the solder melts? You want it to flow smoothly. Like this. Can I try? Lily asked eagerly. With supervision, Evan said, coming to watch. And safety glasses. They worked together on the robot, Amelia guiding Lily's hands carefully. The shop filled with the sounds of their collaboration, Lily's excited questions, Amelia's patient explanations, and shared laughter when the robot's first test run sent it spinning in circles. We just need to adjust the weight distribution, Amelia explained, helping Lily make the corrections. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get things right. By the time they fixed the robot's balance issues, the afternoon had slipped into evening. Lily's robot zoomed proudly across the workbench as Evan cleaned up his tools. Thank you for helping me, Lily said, hugging Amelia impulsively. This was the best afternoon ever. Later that night, Amelia stood in her penthouse apartment looking at a framed photograph on her desk. Her parents smiled back at her from in front of their old laundromat, their faces proud despite their worn work clothes. She touched the frame gently, remembering the smell of detergent and the hum of dryers, the way her mother had taught her to fold fitted sheets with careful precision. For the first time in years, she felt that same sense of purpose, of belonging, not in boardrooms or at charity galas, but in a small-town auto shop, learning to braid a little girl's hair, Golden leaves danced in the crisp October breeze as Meadow Ridge's town square came alive with the annual fall festival. Red and orange bunting decorated the lampposts, and the scent of apple cider and cinnamon donuts wafted through the air. Wooden booths lined the square, offering everything from hand-knitted scarves to pumpkin pies. Evan adjusted his tie for the 10th time that morning, standing near the covered Lily's Lift sign. The choir members were arranging themselves on the small stage, their burgundy robes bright against the autumn backdrop. "Daddy, stop fidgeting," Lily said, smoothing her new dress. "You look handsome." "Thanks, sweetheart." He smiled down at her, touched by her attempt to calm his nerves. "Have you seen Amelia?" "Right here." Amelia's voice came from behind them. She wore a simple cream sweater and burgundy skirt, her dark hair caught by the breeze. "Sorry I'm late. The printer had a last-minute problem with the brochures." Lily rushed to hug her. "You look pretty. Like fall leaves." Pastor Ruth approached the microphone, her voice warm and steady. "Friends and neighbors, we're gathered here today to celebrate something special. Lily's Lift isn't just about fixing cars, it's about lifting each other up when times are hard." The crowd gathered closer, thermoses of hot cider in hand. Even those who had whispered about the Kingsley scandal seemed caught up in the festive mood. "Would our founders please come forward?" Pastor Ruth gestured to Evan, Amelia, and Lily. They stepped up to the ribbon, a wide burgundy band stretched across the new sign. Amelia bent down to Lily. "Ready for your big moment?" Lily nodded eagerly, and Amelia lifted her up so she could reach the ribbon. Someone handed her the oversized scissors, and the choir began to sing, "Leaning on the Everlasting Arms." The familiar hymn floated across the square, voices harmonizing in the morning air. 1, 2, 3. Lily counted and snipped the ribbon. The crowd cheered as the sign was unveiled. Lily's Lift, Veterans Helping Veterans, in bold letters, with a bright yellow star painted beside it. Throughout the morning, Evan and Amelia worked the veterans' booth together, their movements easy and synchronized. They handed out brochures, explained the program, and shared stories with interested visitors. Amelia seemed to glow, far from her usual corporate persona, as she chatted with elderly veterans about their service years. "Young lady," one older veteran said to her, "what you're doing here, it matters. Don't let anyone tell you different." The morning merged into afternoon. Children ran past with painted faces, and the smell of barbecue joined the autumn air. At the bake sale booth, church ladies arranged pies and cookies while trading friendly gossip. "Daddy, can I go watch the pumpkin carving?" Lily asked, pointing to where a small crowd had gathered. "Stay where Mrs. Wilson can see you," Evan agreed, watching her skip off. He and Amelia found themselves alone behind the bake sale booth, taking a brief break from the crowd. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. "Thank you," Evan said quietly, "for everything you've done for us, for the community." Amelia turned to face him, her eyes soft. "I should be thanking you. And Lily, you've shown me what really matters." They stood close, the festival sounds fading into background noise. Evan reached up, gently brushing a leaf from Amelia's hair. The moment stretched, delicate as spun sugar, until he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and brief, but full of promise. From her vantage point near the cookie display, Belinda Shaw watched with a knowing smile, discreetly turning away to give them privacy. The kiss ended naturally, both of them slightly flushed but smiling. Before either could speak, Lily's voice called out, "Daddy, Amelia, come see my pumpkin." They found her proudly displaying a somewhat lopsided jack-o'-lantern, her hands stained orange with pumpkin pulp. As the festival wound down, strings of lights began twinkling in the gathering dusk. The trio walked home together, Lily between them, holding both their hands. She swung their arms as they walked, humming the hymn from that morning. The lights reflected off shop windows and cast warm pools on the sidewalk. Lily's shoes made satisfying crunching sounds through the fallen leaves, and somewhere in the distance, The last notes of the festival's music floated on the evening air. The Monday morning sun cast long shadows across the repair shop's concrete floor as Evan sorted through a stack of intake forms from the festival. The local news played quietly on the old radio near his workbench, mostly background noise until a familiar name caught his attention. Harold Kingsley has categorically denied the paternity claims, the reporter announced. In a statement released this morning, Kingsley's attorneys called the accusations a calculated attempt at extortion and suggested legal action may follow. Evan's hand tightened on the papers. Through the office window, he could see Lily at her usual spot, working on homework before school. The bell above the shop door chimed. "Did you hear?" Pastor Ruth walked in, her usual warm smile replaced by concern. She carried 2 paper cups of coffee. "Just now." Evan accepted one of the cups. "How's Maria doing?" "Holding up. She's still staying at my place." Pastor Ruth lowered her voice. Diego asked why they can't go home. The radio continued its morning report. Sources close to Kingsley suggest the timing of these allegations, coinciding with his foundation's annual grant cycle, raises questions about motive. Evan switched it off. "What about Amelia? Have you heard from her?" "That's partly why I'm here." Pastor Ruth settled into the worn office chair. Her board called an emergency meeting this morning. They're not happy about her involvement with the town, or with Maria. The shop phone rang, making them both jump. Evan answered it, his expression darkening as he listened. "Another cancellation," he said after hanging up. "Third one today. People are choosing sides." Across town in her office, Amelia stood at the window, watching the city wake up. Her phone buzzed again, the 15th message from board members since dawn. The latest text was clear. "Distance yourself from this situation. Now." Her assistant knocked softly. "Ms. Chen?" "The board's waiting in the conference room." Amelia smoothed her blazer and walked down the hallway, her heels clicking against marble floors. Through the glass walls, she could see them, 12 men and women in expensive suits, faces set in careful masks of concern. "Amelia," the board chairman, Richard Morton, gestured to the empty seat at the head of the table. "We need to discuss damage control." "What exactly are we controlling?" Amelia kept her voice level. "A mother's right to speak her truth?" "We're protecting this company's reputation," another board member cut in. "Your involvement in local matters has become a liability." "Local matters?" Amelia's eyebrow arched. "You mean supporting veterans and standing against injustice?" Morton slid a tablet across the table. On the screen, share prices tracked steadily downward. 3 major investors have expressed concerns about leadership stability. They're questioning your judgment. "My judgment has built this company," Amelia said quietly, "and now it's threatening to undermine it." Morton's tone softened slightly. "Step back from Meadow Ridge. Release a statement supporting Kingsley's position. That's all we're asking." Amelia stood, gathering her papers. "I'll take your concerns under advisement." She left the boardroom, ignoring the murmurs behind her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Pastor Ruth. "Can we meet? Important information about Maria's case." They met at a small cafe on the edge of town, away from curious eyes. Pastor Ruth arrived carrying a worn leather bag. "Maria showed me something last night," she said, stirring her tea. "She's never shared it with anyone else, not even lawyers." "What kind of something?" "Letters. And a locket." Pastor Ruth glanced around before continuing. "She's kept them all these years, afraid to use them, afraid of losing what little security she had." Amelia leaned forward. "Letters from Kingsley?" "And more. But she needs to know she'll be protected before she comes forward. Her job, Diego's future, everything's at stake." Before Amelia could respond, her phone lit up with an email notification. The subject line read, "Immediate Board Action Notice." "Excuse me," she murmured, opening the message. The words blurred slightly as she read, "Temporary suspension of duties pending review." concerns regarding recent public associations, protection of shareholder interests. She set the phone down carefully, her fingers trembling slightly. Pastor Ruth reached across the table, covering Amelia's hand with her own. "What will you do?" the pastor asked softly. Amelia looked out the cafe window, watching leaves scatter across the sidewalk. Somewhere in town, Lily was probably in class, maybe thinking about the robot they'd built together. Evan would be at his shop, trying to keep his business alive despite the growing scandal. Maria would be making Diego's lunch, wondering if she'd made the right choice in speaking up. Back in her office that evening, Amelia sat at her desk, the city lights twinkling beyond her window. The suspension notice glowed on her laptop screen, its formal language a stark contrast to the warmth she'd found in Meadow Ridge. She read it one more time, each word heavy with implied threat and disapproval. Then, with deliberate calm, she closed the laptop, her jaw set, hard and determined in the dim light. The morning fog hung low over Meadow Ridge as Evan pulled into the shop's parking lot. His headlights swept across the building's front, and his heart stopped. Harsh red letters screamed across his garage door, "Gold Digger." He sat in his truck, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The paint was still fresh, drips running down the metal like bloody tears. This was his father's shop, his grandfather's before that. Now this. His phone buzzed, Lily's morning reminder to pack her lunch. Reality crashed back. He had to clean this up before she arrived for her usual morning homework session. The hardware store wouldn't open for hours. He grabbed the pressure washer from the back room and started spraying, but the paint was stubborn. Each blast of water only seemed to make the message angrier, more accusing. "Need help?" He turned to find Pastor Ruth, holding 2 cups of coffee. She set them down and grabbed a scrub brush without waiting for an answer. "You don't have to," he started. "Hush now," she said, already scrubbing. Many hands make light work. They worked in silence as the sun rose. Other neighbors appeared. Mr. Johnson from the diner brought industrial cleaner. Mrs. Martinez arrived with rags and rubbing alcohol. By the time Lily's school bus approached, they'd managed to fade the worst of it. "Wait here," Pastor Ruth told Evan, intercepting the bus. She spoke briefly to the driver, then walked Lily around the back entrance. Inside, Lily settled at her usual homework spot while Evan tried to focus on paperwork. The morning crept by with canceled appointments and awkward phone calls. At 2 o'clock, a sharp knock echoed through the shop. A woman in a crisp blazer stood in the doorway, holding a manila folder. "Mr. Brooks? I'm Sandra Wheeler from Child Protective Services. We received a concern about Lily's living situation." The wrench Evan was holding clattered to the floor. "What?" "Standard procedure requires us to investigate all reports." She glanced around the shop. "Is there somewhere private we can talk?" Evan led her to his small office, heart pounding. Through the window, he could see Lily reading, oblivious. "We received an anonymous complaint about unstable living conditions," Sandra explained, opening her folder. "The report mentions possible exposure to inappropriate relationships and media attention affecting Lily's well-being." "Inappropriate," Evan's throat tightened. "This is about Amelia. The complaint references your involvement with Ms. Chen and the current situation with Mr. Kingsley." Sandra's pen hovered over her notepad. "Can you tell me about Lily's daily routine?" For the next hour, Evan answered questions about meals, homework, bedtimes. He showed Sandra Lily's corner of the shop, set up with books and art supplies, described their apartment above the hardware store, the regular dinners with his in-laws, the support from church members. "Everything seems well structured," Sandra admitted, making final notes. "But given the current publicity, we'll need to schedule a home visit, and I recommend minimizing Lily's exposure to complicated situations." After she left, Evan sat at his desk, head in his hands. The shop phone rang, Amelia's number flashing on the display. He let it go to voicemail. That evening, after Lily was asleep, he drove to Amelia's building. The security guard recognized him, waving him up to her penthouse. Amelia opened the door in casual clothes, so different from her CEO armor. "Evan? What's wrong?" "CPS came today." He remained in the doorway, unable to step inside. "Someone filed a complaint." "What? Who would?" Understanding dawned on her face. "The board. They're trying to pressure me through you. It doesn't matter who." Evan's voice was hollow. "They're right. This attention, this scandal, it's not good for Lily." "We can fight this," Amelia said. "I have lawyers, resources." "That's exactly what I'm talking about." He stepped back. "I can't risk Lily getting caught in some legal battle. She's already lost one mother. I won't let anyone take her from me." "Evan, please." Amelia reached for his hand. "Let me help." He pulled away. "We need space. Time for things to calm down." The words felt like stones in his mouth. "I'm sorry." He turned and walked to the elevator, not looking back. Didn't see Amelia's hand press against the doorframe, holding herself steady. In her penthouse, Amelia stood at her usual window spot. The city sparkled below, but all she could see was Lily's smile, Evan's quiet strength. Her phone lay silent on the counter. No messages, no calls. The lights of Meadow Ridge glowed in the distance, so close yet suddenly unreachable. She picked up her phone, thumb hovering over Evan's number, then set it down again. Outside, a late autumn wind scattered leaves across her balcony, and somewhere in town, a father and daughter sat down to dinner without her. The wooden pews of First Methodist creaked under the weight of nearly every resident in Meadow Ridge. Pastor Ruth had called for a Truth Grace gathering. No press, no cameras, just neighbors seeking understanding. The autumn evening pressed dark against the stained glass windows, while inside, soft lamplight cast long shadows across concerned faces. Maria Alvarez sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Diego leaned against her, half asleep despite the tension in the room. Behind them, scattered throughout the church, sat familiar faces. The diner owner, teachers from Diego's school, mechanics from Evan's shop. Evan himself sat near the back, alone. Harold Kingsley occupied a corner pew, his usual confidence dimmed. His lawyer had advised against coming, but here he was, straight-backed and stone-faced. Amelia Chen slipped in quietly just as Pastor Ruth approached the pulpit. She chose a seat halfway down, careful not to draw attention. "We're here tonight," Pastor Ruth began, her voice gentle but firm, "because truth matters, because healing can't happen in shadows. Maria has asked to speak, and we will listen with open hearts." Maria stood slowly, squeezing Diego's shoulder before walking to the front. She smoothed her skirt, the same one she wore for church every Sunday, and faced her neighbors. "For 15 years, she started, her accent thick with emotion, "I cleaned Mr. Kingsley's house. I saw his family photos, dusted his awards, washed his clothes. I was invisible until I wasn't." She reached into her pocket and withdrew an old silver locket. The metal caught the light as she held it up. "His wife, Eleanor, gave me this. She knew about the baby before anyone." Maria's voice strengthened. "She knew because she found the test results Harold had hidden. She came to me crying, not in anger, but in shame, shame for her husband's actions." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Harold shifted in his seat but remained silent. Eleanor made him take another test. She kept copies. Maria nodded to Pastor Ruth, who brought forward a manila envelope. "She gave me these letters too. She wrote to me every month until she died, sending money in secret, begging forgiveness for her husband's denial." Pastor Ruth began passing out copies of the documents, medical records, handwritten letters, bank statements. The rustle of paper filled the church as people read. "I never wanted money," Maria continued. "I wanted Diego to know his father, to have a name, a history, a family." She turned to face Harold directly. "You were so afraid of scandal, you forgot about the person, the child, your son, Mrs. Martinez from the grocery store stood up. "I've known Maria for 6 years. She works 3 jobs, never complains, always has a kind word. How dare you treat her this way?" "The dates match," Mr. Johnson from the diner added, studying the papers. "These tests are real." More voices joined in, years of quiet observation surfacing. The housekeeper who'd worked alongside Maria. The gardener who'd seen Harold's secret visits years ago. The bank teller who'd helped Maria cash Eleanor's checks. Through it all, Harold sat rigid, his expression unreadable. When the voices finally quieted, he stood. Everyone expected him to speak, to defend himself, or deny everything again. Instead, he walked out. His footsteps echoed on the wooden floor, followed by the heavy thud of the church door. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Diego had woken up during the commotion and now clung to his mother's skirt, confused by the tension. Pastor Ruth returned to the pulpit. "Truth has been spoken. Now comes the harder part, grace. Not forgetting, not excusing, but finding a way forward." People began to rise, gathering around Maria. Mrs. Martinez hugged her tight. Mr. Johnson promised Diego could have free milkshakes whenever he wanted. The choir director invited them both to Sunday services. Amelia watched from her pew as the community surrounded mother and son. She thought about her own mother, who'd cleaned houses before opening the laundromat, about power and pride, and the courage it took to stand up to both. As the crowd thinned, she approached Maria. No grand gestures, no public statements, just a quiet offer. "Would you like me to walk you and Diego home?" Maria studied her for a moment, then nodded. Diego took his mother's hand on one side, and together the 3 of them stepped out into the cool night air. They walked in comfortable silence, their shadows stretching long under the streetlights. Diego skipped ahead occasionally to examine interesting leaves or rocks, his innocence a reminder of what really mattered. At Maria's modest apartment building, before they parted, Amelia finally spoke. "You were very brave tonight. Bravery is easier when you're not alone." Maria replied, looking back toward the church, where lights still glowed in the windows. The truth had been told. Grace would come in its own time. For now, this quiet solidarity under the stars was enough. Friday morning dawned clear and crisp over Meadow Ridge. Amelia Chen stood before her bathroom mirror, straightening her blazer with practiced precision. Today wasn't about looking powerful, it was about being powerful in the right way. Her phone buzzed with urgent messages from board members, but she ignored them. Instead, she opened the company charter on her tablet, the document she'd written herself when founding Chen Healthcare Technologies. Her finger traced down to Article 7, Section 3, Ethical Investment Standards. In her office downtown, she gathered her executive team. "I'm invoking the Moral Conduct Clause," she announced, her voice steady. "We're calling a shareholder vote on Harold Kingsley's continued investment position." Her CFO shifted nervously. "Ms. Chen, the market impact will be managed," Amelia cut in. "What matters is doing what's right." Across town at the Meadow Ridge Gazette, Belinda Shaw sat at her desk, surrounded by photocopies of Eleanor Kingsley's letters and medical records. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she crafted her most important piece in 30 years of journalism. "Truth and Consequences, the full story behind the Kingsley revelation," read her headline. The article laid out the facts with careful precision, the timeline, the evidence, the human cost of silence. Within hours of the story going live, the comments section exploded with support, particularly from Meadow Ridge's senior citizens. "I worked for the Kingsleys for 20 years, wrote Margaret Wilson, age 72. "Eleanor would want the truth told." "My grandson is Diego's age," posted Frank Murphy, 68. "Every child deserves to know their father." The wave of community response reached Harold Kingsley in his study. He sat in his leather chair, Eleanor's letters spread across his desk. His wife's words stared back at him. "Do right by them, Harold, before it's too late." At noon, he called a press conference on the steps of City Hall. Camera crews jostled for position as he approached the microphone, looking older than his years. "I have lived a lie." he began, his voice rough. "Diego Alvarez is my son. I denied him out of pride and fear, continuing that denial even after my beloved wife Eleanor tried to make things right." The crowd murmured as he continued, "I am establishing a trust fund for Diego's education and future. I am resigning from all board positions, including Chen Healthcare Technologies. To Maria and Diego, I offer my deepest apologies and hope that, with time, we might build some kind of relationship." Across town, Evan Brooks watched the press conference on his shop's small TV. His in-laws, Tom and Susan, sat with him, their faces thoughtful. "That, Amelia," Susan said softly. "She helped bring this truth to light, didn't she?" Evan nodded, thinking of Amelia's quiet strength these past weeks. Tom cleared his throat. "We've been worried about Lily, about all this attention, but seeing how Ms. Chen handled everything," he exchanged a look with his wife, "we're withdrawing our custody concerns. Lily needs people of integrity in her life. Ms. Chen certainly qualifies." Relief washed over Evan's face. "Thank you," he managed. Later that afternoon, Amelia received confirmation. The shareholder vote had passed overwhelmingly. Kingsley's shares would be bought out, his influence ended. She closed her laptop and looked out her office window at the town below. A small jewelry box sat on her desk, something she'd noticed Evan dropping off earlier with her secretary. Inside was a simple silver ring, well worn but recently polished. A note explained it had belonged to his grandmother. The evening settled over Meadow Ridge, stars beginning to peek through the darkening sky. Amelia had just changed into comfortable clothes when a knock sounded at her door. Her heart quickened. She recognized that knock. Opening the door, she found Evan standing there, looking nervous but determined. In his hand, he held that same small box. Snow fell softly outside the Meadow Ridge Community Church, coating the December evening in pristine white. Inside, parents and grandparents filled the wooden pews, programs rustling as they settled in for the annual Christmas pageant. Amelia Chen sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Beside her, Maria Alvarez adjusted Diego's shepherd's costume one last time before he scampered off to join the other children backstage. The familiar scent of pine boughs and candle wax filled the air. "Nervous?" Maria whispered, noticing Amelia's tension. Amelia smiled. "Is it that obvious?" Only to another mother. The word still caught Amelia off guard sometimes. Mother. These past months had transformed her life in ways she never expected. Her corporate office now shared space with crayon drawings and a small desk where Lily did her homework. Pastor Ruth's voice carried from the back of the church. "Places, everyone! 5 minutes!" Chaos erupted backstage. The original Joseph had come down with the flu that morning, forcing Evan to step in at the last minute. Amelia could hear him practicing his lines in a rushed whisper behind the curtain. The piano began to play Silent Night as the lights dimmed. Small faces appeared in the wings, shepherds clutching plastic crooks, wise men adjusting crooked crowns. Diego gave a tiny wave from his position. Mary entered first, played by 10-year-old Sophie Williams, carrying a swaddled doll. Then came Evan as Joseph, looking both endearing and slightly terrified in his hastily assembled costume. A genuine smile spread across Amelia's face as she watched him concentrate on remembering where to stand. The angels appeared next, led by Lily. Her white dress sparkled with silver tinsel, and her wings, painstakingly crafted by Evan over several late nights, caught the light perfectly. She took her position above the manger scene, face serious with responsibility. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly choir director, beamed as the children's voices rose in "Away in a Manger." Even the youngest shepherds managed to stay mostly on key. Evan remembered to kneel at the right moment, though he nearly tripped on his robe. Lily's solo came next. She stepped forward, her small voice clear and sweet. "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace. Goodwill toward men." Pride swelled in Amelia's chest as she watched the little girl who had changed everything. The pageant moved through its familiar scenes: the shepherd's arrival, the wise men's gifts, the final tableau around the manger. When the last note faded, the congregation burst into enthusiastic applause. Parents rushed forward to congratulate their children. Amelia stood, smoothing her skirt, watching as Lily carefully removed her wings. Their eyes met across the church. "Amelia!" Lily called out, breaking into a run. She launched herself forward, wrapping her arms tight around Amelia's waist. The force nearly knocked them both over. Then, soft but clear, "Mommy." The word hung in the air between them, precious and new. Amelia's breath caught in her throat as she knelt to Lily's level, the way she had that first morning at the pancake breakfast. Tears pricked at her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling Lily close. Evan appeared beside them, still wearing his Joseph costume. His eyes were soft as he watched them together. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a simple silver ring, the same one he'd shown her months ago, his grandmother's band now polished to a gentle shine. "I think," he said quietly, taking Amelia's hand, "this belongs here." The ring slipped perfectly onto her finger. "We'll take it slow," he promised. "Build our life together, day by day." Around them, the church hummed with activity. Pastor Ruth directed the cleanup crew, Diego helped fold chairs, and Mrs. Patterson gathered scattered sheet music, but in that moment, they were in their own quiet world. "Like fixing an engine," Amelia said, touching the ring, "one part at a time." "Exactly," Evan smiled. "Though I hope our family runs a little smoother than some of those old trucks." Spring came to Meadow Ridge in a burst of green and renewal. The community garage, now officially named Lily's Lift, buzzed with activity. Veterans' trucks lined the parking lot, waiting for service. Inside, the walls displayed dozens of framed Polaroids, smiling faces next to repaired vehicles, single parents in fresh work uniforms, children proudly holding up academic certificates. Near the entrance hung a bronze plaque, its surface catching the morning light. The words were simple but true: "Love is the longest warranty." Lily sat at her homework desk by the office window, tongue stuck out in concentration as she worked on her math problems. Evan moved between repair bays, teaching a group of veterans basic maintenance skills. Amelia reviewed applications for the foundation's next round of grants, occasionally glancing up to watch her family at work. The sound of their shared laughter echoed through the garage, mixing with the metallic clinks of tools and the warm greetings of neighbors. Outside, Meadow Ridge went about its daily business, transformed by truth and second chances into something stronger than before.